Hello APUSH students. Today's video lecture is going to be on FDR and the New Deal. And so we're going to look through a lot of images, kind of go through a lot of different topics here and there to kind of add on from the causes of the Great Depression, which was in a stations activity that's already posted on the blog. And this is going to be once FDR is elected in 1932. So definitely make a pause, get out your pencil and paper, all right, and let's get started. All right, so we're going to start with that election of 1932. All right, this is between FDR and Hoover, and you can see on our electoral map here that Roosevelt wins in a landslide, all right, with those electoral votes. But when we look at that popular vote, you still have 40% of the population voted for Hoover, right? This election is not just this election where FDR wins, but this is really going to be a shift in how the Republican Party and Democratic Party are going to be seen in their interactions with who should be in control. Right? To give you a better example of this is FDR is going to say that the way to fix the Depression is to have the federal government step in and make decisions. So then it's equally distributed for all the different states. The Republicans with Hoover are going to want it to be a state-by-state, local issue, local control response. And his idea was that the people at a local level know better for what is good for the people that live there. We could have a really good CCOT comparison here with currently what is happening with the COVID-19 epidemic, is that we are having this same kind of back and forth of who should be in charge. Should the federal government be in charge, or should the states be in charge of the response? And we've seen kind of the goods and bads of this sort of thing in our current everyday lives. And so this same idea is being kind of starting out in this 1932 election. And so this is where we really start to see the two political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, look more modern, like we have today, all right, opposed to what they were before. So this is the election when they kind of get, they're looking more modern, and they are flipping any of those philosophies they had in the past, right? So before, when we've talked about, like, you know, Democrats and Republicans, and things were a little confusing because it seemed the opposite of what we have now, this is when they are aligning in our modern times. So definitely when you're reading through different things, really focus on what are the two philosophies of who should be controlling the government with those Democrats and Republicans. And again, this election kind of aligns that. We're going to look at a lot of different political cartoons here. So this one here, we have Roosevelt. Right? He is going to be the captain of the ship, and he is sailing this ship away from the storm, which is the Depression, to the rainbow of recovery, and he's taking the American people with him, right? However, the way he is steering this boat, you're still going to have people that are these detractors. These are going to be people who criticize him and are trying to basically tell him how to steer the boat, kind of the backseat drivers that are criticizing you. So even though a lot of people are going to like the things Roosevelt does during the Great Depression to try and fix things, not everyone is going to agree. Right? So when we get to the New Deal, here is a famous cartoon from this time period that really is showing how FDR is taking his New Deal programs and he's trying to whip Congress into shape. So Congress is being shown here as a snail. Snails are notorious to be slow, right? And so obviously Congress, right, the idea of Congress is to have lots of say and debate on different topics. However, the process of them passing a law is very, very slow and cumbersome, and we need some fast action. So he's kind of like whipping them into shape. This cartoon is titled The Galloping Snail. So really good kind of like use of imagery here to really show what the New Deal is supposed to do. Right? The New Deal is broken into two New Deals, the first New Deal and the second New Deal. And basically it's the first 100 days, and then the rest of the Great Depression is the second New Deal, right? You're not going to need to know really precisely what happens in first versus second, but basically this idea that there are two different forms of it. One is that first 100 days, and then we go to the rest of the time period. Right. So when presidents after FDR are coming into office, they are kind of judged, given a report card, if you will, on their first 100 days in office. Are they doing well or doing anything bad? Right. And FDR kind of hits the ground running here with that first 100 days. He starts off with things called the fireside chats. Right. So we have people down here in this picture on the bottom left listening to the radio. And so basically what he would do is every week he would have a radio address and he would have the fire crackling in the background. And talking to the American people and restoring confidence in what was going on. And he was really honest with people and tried to say, we're going to try this. It doesn't work. We'll try something else. And he really made people feel that they could trust him, which is also why he's going to be elected president 4 times. All right. So this stuff sort of makes sense how people really trusted the actions and decisions of Roosevelt, right? His cabinet is going to be nicknamed the Brain Trust, right? Because he's going to try and find people from all different parties and all different parts of life to have really smart people together to come up with a solution to fix the Depression, right? And some of these people he's going to gather together. He's going to create a new department, this Department of Labor, and that person is going to be that department is going to be headed by Frances Perkins, who'll be the first woman in the U.S. cabinet. So we're getting up new ideas that way. We're also going to be using a new economic philosophy called Keynesian economics, all right, or Keynesian economics, right? Either pronunciation works, right? So John Maynard Keynes, in his economic philosophy, is something called deficit spending. Right. And deficit spending is basically you can't make money if you don't spend any money. So think if you have a new business, you have to buy the product that you're making, you have to buy the storefront to have that business have started. You got to like pay the money to start the website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And until you spend that money, you can't make any money. Right. Now, this philosophy is then being used towards the national government and towards the country. So it's basically we're going to spend a lot of money. We're going to have a huge deficit, a huge debt in the country. But if we don't start having these jobs or creations of things getting rolling, you're not going to have anyone making any money. So you got to spend money to make money. Right. And again, if you need a little bit extra help on that particular topic of understanding how Keynesian economics works, definitely just go on YouTube here and Google that term or search that term, and you will find lots and lots of stuff on it. Some scholars say it is something that works to get an economy starting to go running. Other people say it just creates a large deficit that you can't come back from. It's debatable, and it's one of those things that you are going to spend a lot of money, but if you're not starting out businesses, then you got to do something. And so that's really what FDR is really pushing here, is the idea of you got to do something. He's going to set up a bank holiday. So think of like a holiday, you go on vacation. Right. And so he's basically closing all the banks for 4 days, basically to make sure that people stop having bank runs. So one of the things in your guys' station stuff was about what bank runs were, right? Why are people doing that? So he's closing those banks for 4 days, and they're trying to allow that time for Congress to be making some sort of legislation to secure the banks, right? And so we create this act, this Glass-Steagall Act, which is all we need to know about this law is that it establishes the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the FDIC, right? So anytime you go to a bank, you're going to see this FDIC sticker on the door, right? Okay, and that FDIC sticker basically means that your bank deposits are going to be guaranteed by the federal government. So if, say, something happens, like the bank is robbed or the bank goes under and is bankrupt, your money will still be there in those bank accounts. You will be guaranteed to get your money back from the federal government. During the Depression here, we are only going to insure deposits up to $5,000. Nowadays, it is up to $250,000, and that is per account. So basically, if you got enough money that you need more than that in one account, you get another account. So your money is going to be guaranteed by that federal government just in case something goes really, really bad, right? We're also going to try to have this Unemployment Relief Act. So another law that, and again, all these laws we're looking at, they're just creating something else. So that's really all we need to know about those. So this is going to be creating the CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps. So we got a little picture over here of this guy. And the Civilian Conservation Corps is going to be employing young American men to try and work on environmentally beneficial projects. So think of like trails, the Appalachian Trail, things like that. They're going to be doing those things. And it's basically a way to get these young, energetic people to go and do some sort of work where they can get paid a small amount of money, but basically make it so they're not idle, just sitting around, because potential bad things might happen if they're really, really bored. Okay, so let's look at a map real quick. Every dot, I know this map is a little fuzzy, but bear with me. It is in your online textbook if you need to look it up. Just kind of search that map 23.2. But every single dot on here, these little purple dots, are all of these different CCC projects that are going to be done. So you can definitely see a lot here in the Appalachian Trail area, right? Again, lots of national parks that are going to be created. If you are somebody who likes to go hiking, a lot of those places are going to have like a sign that says, oh, it's created by the CCC. So you'll see that a lot. Definitely something to kind of keep in mind when you're, being able to be out and about in some places. Okay, to continue on with this first 100 days, all right, we get a lot of these different organizations. So since all these organizations have acronyms that go with them, it's going to be nicknamed the Alphabet Soup Agencies. One of the things on the blog is a worksheet that you can print it out if you have access to print it. If you don't, all right, just kind of fill it out on your own sheet of paper. But it's a good way to review what are the different organizations, what are they doing to help, and how are they trying to fix something. Okay, so it's a nice like review to have them all in one place. So I'd highly recommend that you do that and put that in your notebooks for this period 7 time period. So one of our other things we got here is the AAA. Again, not dealing with our modern AAA with cars, but this is the Agricultural Adjustment Act. The purpose of this was to basically pay farmers not to plant crops. And the purpose of this was to try and control the prices of our crops, because again, those farmers were doing really bad during the 1920s. We're trying to help them with some relief. However, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that this was unconstitutional because it was an overstep of the boundaries of the federal government. The federal government was not allowed to do something like this, and so the AAA goes away. So it's declared unconstitutional by this particular court case, Butler versus the U.S. Right? So that one goes away. The Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, it is still around today, right? And they're going to construct dams in the Tennessee River to generate electricity for the region and prevent flooding. So that's going to be a really great thing for that area. If you go up to Chattanooga ever and are driving around, you will see tons of things that say the TVA. And so kind of nice that that is still around and is creating, hydroelectric power. Okay. The NRA, again, not the modern NRA, the National Recovery Administration, right? So for that one, it is going to set aside nationwide business practices, okay, or set nationwide business practices, right, and help with recovery, right? And so with this is that they tried to create a minimum wage, and again, the Supreme Court decided this was unconstitutional because it is an overstep of the federal government. We will see the advent of a minimum wage added later, so they're going to try again with that one, but this time, this one's not going to work, right? Our Public Works Administration, the PWA, all right, is going to employ people who are going to like start working on roads, and they're also going to start working on art projects and things like that, just to, again, get people out to work, get people to go and do something. Because if people are just staying at home or just wandering around all the time, you've got to help boost the morale somehow. So the PWA is going to be one of those groups that's going to try and help out with that. Right, and the 21st Amendment, we saw that one before, right, and that is going to end prohibition, right, which was the 18th Amendment. So it's going to repeal the 18th Amendment. All right, so let's look at some maps. So here is a map of all the areas affected by the TVA, right? So you can definitely see North Georgia is involved with this, and basically this is the whole flood area of those rivers, and so all the area that's in yellow is going to be allowed to get electricity from this new program. right? And the PWA, here are a bunch of, and I know this picture is really small, but it gives you an idea of just how the PWA is going to be involved in all the different states. Lots of different things are going on. And again, another way to get people out to work, to get them doing something. And you guys can really kind of, with our current experience, kind of really relate to what was happening in the Depression of like just getting people out to go do something. You really get more of a feeling of accomplishment when you're able to have like a task. And so, we can kind of have that better relation of knowing what people were going through during that time period. Now, we can't obviously figure out exactly how they felt, but it's that idea where we have a better understanding now. Okay, now Eleanor Roosevelt, she is going to be the helpful person for Roosevelt this entire time during his presidency. Without her, he would not have been as successful as he was. Now, some of the things with Miss Eleanor here is that remember that FDR had polio, and so you are always going to see him sitting down. So in our pictures here and our pictures here, right? So she's really going to be the one that's going to be out in public doing a lot of things for her husband. So we see her here and here out in public doing a lot of things. And some of the things that she's really going to promote and help is help women get involved in politics and help have these programs reach minorities. One of the things that you're going to read in your Unit 7 packet is these articles that are dealing with how people reacted to the New Deal. And some people are definitely going to have the biggest criticism that the New Deal did not help minorities as much as it should have. And that is totally true, right? She's going to be the only person really to try and help minorities and actually speak about what's going on with them. A lot of people did not. And to give you kind of an idea on her background is she's going to be the first white member of the NAACP in Washington. Now that's just not white woman, white person. And she's going to be the very, very first one. So she's going to be doing a whole lot of interaction and involvement. For other things, after FDR passes away, she will become a member of the human rights organizations that are part of the United Nations, and she helps write the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that we currently have in the world. Right, so she's going to be involved in a lot of different things. Right, now FDR doesn't always make the best decisions. Right, he tries, but one of these topics that we're going to have some issues with is with the Supreme Court. So he has this thing that's called the court packing scandal or court packing scheme, depending on where you're seeing things, and he basically, all those programs that were deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, he's going to try and fix it. And so he comes up with this idea that he's like, hey, the president is allowed to appoint justices to the Supreme Court, so I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to just add from 9 members to 15. Well, that sounds like a good idea because they would help him, but at the same time, people that would criticize him are going to be like, whoa, 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 you're kind of messing up that balance of power and trying to control another branch of government. So these two political cartoons we have here, this one, Uncle Sam is in shock because all of these judges are saying yes to everything and they're kind of like puppets of FDR. So that's definitely huge criticism. This is a problem. Over here, his VP, Truman, is being shown his new Supreme Court plan where he has these 2 giant towers where they're adding all the stuff to the Supreme Court. Now, FDR, after people criticize him about this, goes on one of those fireside chats and is like, okay, guys, my bad, and backs off on this and doesn't follow through. So he does listen to his critics and he realizes that like, hey, I had a good idea, but it might not have been that great of an idea. Now, his critics, he has lots of them. We're going to focus here on 3 of them. When you're reading through different stuff, there's a lot of things about his critics, his opponents, and so I'm just kind of giving you all of their information right here, right, just to kind of help us out. All right, so he has a priest, a doctor, and a politician who do not like him. All right, so we start off with Father Coughlin. He is going to be on the radio, has a lot of followers. He is, since he's a father, he's Catholic, and so he is going to be really influencing a lot of stuff of how people are reacting to FDR. So he's talking a whole lot of, horrible things about him, and a lot of people listen to him, 40 million listeners. However, he will kind of fade into the background once we start seeing in the mid 30s, the rise of Hitler and the Nazis in Germany, because he is going to start in his broadcasts becoming openly anti-Semitic. And obviously that's not going to go over very well. So he'll kind of fade away. Our other two guys, we have Dr. Townsend. He is coming up with this idea to help everybody by giving retirees a monthly check of $200. And so that's everybody who's retired will get $200 a month, but their goal is they have to spend that $200, right? If they don't spend it all, the idea is that they would lose that money. And this again is trying to, what we talked about before, that idea of priming the pump, right? You have to have people spend money to get everything moving in the economy, right? This is not a horrible idea. However, this idea has a lot of aspects of socialism in it, and that idea that we're still coming off of the Red Scare, we're kind of wary about some of these ideas. Right. The other guy we have is the governor of Louisiana, Huey Long, the Kingfish, and his program is called Share the Wealth. So he had the idea that anybody who made over $1 million, anything above $1 million would be taxed 100%. So that means if this year I would make $1 million and $1 million and $1, that $1 over my 1 million, I would have to give entirely to the government. And it's basically to redistribute wealth. Because that was what caused the Great Depression. Obviously, people like the Rockefellers, they still have a lot of money. And so that's who he was kind of going after. He was going after that 1%. However, this was not very popular in Congress and did not get passed because a lot of those people in Congress are influenced by the extremely wealthy, right? But it was a good idea to try and do something because, again, this depression was way worse than anybody ever thought it would be. Right, we got some cartoons here. So again, these two sides, right, we have people that want the New Deal to do more and more and more, and then other people that think that the New Deal would create tyranny, right? So if we look at the one for more, all right, this one's pretty easy. All right, we're spending millions and millions of dollars, well, billions and millions of dollars, and the people are still hungry, needing relief. So it's the idea where we still got to keep doing more, right? On this side, we have a, it's supposed to be kind of like the Trojan horse. So the story of the Trojan horse sneaking in to the city. However, this is not a horse, it's a donkey. So it's supposed to represent the Democrats, which is FDR. And they're trying to sneak this donkey Trojan horse into the Constitution of the United States. So here it's that idea of the balance of like, should we do more or are we doing too much? Right. So, and again, those are going to reflect those opponents of FDR, right? With our second New Deal, right? So again, we did all of that other stuff all in the first 100 days. So FDR was super, super busy all the time, right? So here we have some other of the alphabet soup agencies that we're going to add later. So the SEC, right? Okay, so Security and Exchange Commission, their job is to basically make sure any of the things we do in the stock market do not cause problems. So we don't want insider trading. We don't want speculation. We don't want buying on margin, all those things that were in your guys' stations, because those are things that would cause the stock market to be unstable and would fall apart. The SEC is still around today. The Social Security Act is still around today, right? So the Social Security Act, right, it has multiple parts to it. Mostly we usually think of it as pension for when you're old, like your retirement. Okay, so it has that retirement for the elderly. It also has stuff for the unemployed. So if you're unemployed, you can get your unemployment money, and that comes out of Social Security, right? Also, if you are disabled on the job, or if you have dependents and children, and so say like if something happened and your parents paid into Social Security and they pass away, right? That and you're under the age of 18, you would get a Social Security check to help take care of you until you are an adult, which is 18, right? So we have lots of stuff going in there. So it's helping out the elderly, unemployed, disabled, and dependent children. Right. The Wagner Act, right, which is part of the National Labor Relations Act, but we want to focus on the Wagner Act part, right, is going to allow unions the right to organize and bargain collectively. So yay, we can have unions now, right? So that's a really good thing. The Fair Labor Standards Act, right, we're establishing a minimum wage, overtime pay, and end child labor. So minimum wage is great. Overtime pay, people are going to love that. Ending child labor, some people are going to like that, but remember when we talked before about immigrants is that a lot of times they need those children to work in order to bring money into the family. So not everybody's going to be awesome, like think that's an awesome idea, but in the long run, it is a good idea. Right. Now, the biggest thing with the New Deal is it will restore hope in the future. So in our cartoon here, we have Uncle Sam and little baby FDR here on Christmas Eve of 1933, and he's hanging up his stockings, hoping for something. He even has little his cousin Teddy Roosevelt down here, his little bear. But it will restore hope. Unfortunately, it does not end the Depression. Only World War II does that, right? And it's because the Depression was so bad that only a massive influx of jobs and need is going to get us kind of shocked out of it. Okay. Something to compare similarities are the beginnings of the presidencies of FDR and Obama. So both of these guys are coming into office during an economic crisis. So you would definitely compare the Great Depression to the Great Recession of 2008, right? So those are lots of comparisons between those two. The only reason that the Great Recession of 08 did not turn into depression is because of these things we put in place for the New Deal to try and stop things from getting too terribly bad, right? So there are a lot of connections there. So when Obama was elected, Time magazine made this cover, and they did this on purpose to have that ode back to FDR. And again, that whole idea of the New Deal and how are we impacting things. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit of how are we getting out of the Depression, right? So again, we're going to see lots of cartoons here. These are both from Dr. Seuss, so that's why they look slightly familiar, right? But we are going to start off as isolationists during the beginnings of World War II, right? And we're going to have a series of neutrality acts. We're just going to kind of smush all the neutrality acts together, and basically we're going to say we're not going to ship arms to wartime belligerent countries, and we're not going to make any loans of money to those countries, right? So totally trying to stay neutral in goods and in money, okay? And then FDR is going to give a quarantine speech. And when we think of quarantine, right, it's that idea that you're supposed to stay away from things, right? Like in this cartoon here, Uncle Sam is over here in the bed. He's going to be in separate beds so he won't get sick. However, we know, especially now, that you have to be a little farther apart in order not to get sick. So we're going to look at a quick reference here of that quarantine speech because we might see it again, all right? And that way we can figure out what's going on. So let's have a quick read. So quarantine speech 1937 from FDR. The peace-loving nations must make a concerted effort in opposition to those violations of treaties and those ignoring of humane instincts which today are creating a state of international anarchy and instability from which there is no escape through mere isolation or neutrality. So he's basically at the beginning here saying you can't escape it by just like hiding away. It's gonna come and get you, right? Okay, so then we have those who cherish their freedom and recognize and respect the equal rights of their neighbors to be free and live in peace must work together for the triumph of law and moral principles in order that peace and justice and confidence may prevail in the world. There must be a return to a belief in the pledged word and the value of a signed treaty. There must be a recognition of the fact that national morality is as vital as private morality. So what FDR is saying in this quarantine speech is we can't stay neutral. We can't just be quarantined and think everything's going to be fine. We have to engage. If we don't cherish this freedom and this equal rights of our neighbors, right? So even though it says quarantine speech, he's not saying we should be quarantined. We're saying we shouldn't be quarantined because it's going to come to us eventually, right? Okay, our last little thing here we got is going to be how we're moving from isolationism to involvement, right? And again, this is a really abbreviated version of this, but it gives us a really nice way to start off, right? So Japan is going to be with the Axis powers. So the Axis powers are Japan, Germany, and Italy, right? And Japan wants to be an empire just like we had done, just like the British had done, and so they're going to invade China, and they're going to invade at Nanking. So from world history, you might remember reading stories about the rape of Nanking. This is when that is happening. So that violates our open door policy where everyone was supposed to have equal access to China, right? And so to punish the Japanese, we're going to impose an oil embargo so they can't get any oil from the United States. Right. Europe at the same time is adopting appeasement. Appeasement is basically that idea of like letting somebody get away with something because you're so scared of the consequences that they might react. So I always like to think of this as if you're at the grocery store right? And you see a little kid having a temper tantrum because they want candy, you have two kinds of parents. One parent that will just drag them out of the store and be like, you're not getting any candy. And then you have the parent that appeases them and gives them the candy so that they be quiet. What that child's learned is that if I throw a fit, I will be able to get my candy. That's what we did with Hitler. We're like, hey, we'll just give you this land and then he'll be fine and he won't whine anymore. All he's learning is that, hey, if I pitch a fit, then the rest of the countries of Europe will give in to me. And because we were so scared of another world war. So eventually, through all of this appeasement, Germany invades Poland because they wanted to take that land back from the Treaty of Versailles. Right? So war has officially started in Europe. Over here for the United States, we're still isolationist, but just like with World War I, we want to try to make some money. So we're going to have cash carry and lend-lease. These are kind of step one, step two of us getting involved. So cash and carry is we're going to let you have products, but you have to pay us cash, right? Well, a lot of the allies don't have any cash. So then we're going to go to the next step and be like, okay, now we're going to lend and lease you products. So we're going to give you a plane and we're going to lend it to you, let you borrow it, or let you rent the plane, all right? So we're still trying to get products made, we're selling products, just not at their full cost, okay? These two things here, right, cash carry and lend lease, definitely are what get us out of the depression because now our factories are making something, right? So here in our cartoon from Dr. Seuss, our U.S. Lend Lease and Dunk Corporation is sending all this stuff to England, okay? Right now, Japan obviously is still upset by that oil embargo, and so that's when they're going to attack Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, right? You do need to know that date because obviously it's a huge date in American history, right? December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, right? And that is of what will officially get the United States into World War II, and the U.S. will declare war against the Axis powers, right? Definitely make sure you're reading through your books and everything like that. And if you have questions, tell me what timestamp it is or what the question is and send it to me in Remind or in an email, and I will try to answer all those as quickly as I can. All right. And always, if you got questions, definitely send them my way. All right. See you later, guys. Bye.